I'm just like to make the point that we're very fortunate that His Majesty has allowed us to use Buckingham Palace for this event.
Princess Anne had spent decades mastering the royal art of restraint. She knew when silence protected the crown, when loyalty required discipline, and when a single sentence could become more dangerous than an argument. But this time, she did not soften the blow. In a tense fictionalized private exchange concerning the future of the monarchy, Anne delivered the line no one expected: "Catherine is the only woman Charles truly respects." And suddenly, everyone understood how personal the crisis had become. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Anne felt the room change before anyone answered. The Princess Royal, the title traditionally given to the monarch's eldest daughter, had built her reputation on discipline and loyalty. That was why the words landed so hard. During a discussion about Catherine's expanding responsibilities, she had not offered a compliment. She had made a judgment about Charles, Catherine, and the trust shaping the monarchy's future. Charles did not argue. He removed his glasses, placed them beside his papers, and looked at his sister without speaking. The king understood that silence now carried meaning. William watched his father carefully, disturbed less by Anne's words than by the lack of an immediate denial. The prince knew Catherine had earned influence quietly, but he had never heard anyone define it in such personal terms. Camilla received the account moments later, and disbelief turned into humiliation. The queen consort, the wife of a reigning king, sharing his public role without holding sovereign power, could accept praise for Catherine. What wounded her was the comparison. Anne's sentence questioned years of loyalty beside Charles. Camilla asked whether the words had truly been spoken. When told they had, she went silent. Anne refused to retreat when challenged. She explained that she was not speaking about affection, marriage, or rank. She meant something narrower and more dangerous. Charles instinctively trusted Catherine's judgment when pressure became intense. He listened when she disagreed. He reconsidered when she pushed back. He did not always follow her advice, but he respected that she gave it without fear. William saw the deeper problem. If Anne had finally said this aloud, she had watched that pattern for a long time. If she had noticed it, others had too. The question was no longer why she had spoken. The question was what Charles had done, privately and repeatedly, to convince his sister that Catherine occupied a place no other woman did. Anne's statement had shocked the room, but understanding why it cut so deeply meant looking at the three people now trapped inside it. The most dangerous family statements are rarely dangerous because they are completely unexpected. They are dangerous because everyone recognizes a piece of truth inside them. Anne's fictional declaration places Charles, Catherine, and Camilla into an emotional triangle none of them asked to enter. One woman has become the monarch's trusted future-facing ally. Another has spent years building a place beside him. And Charles is suddenly forced to confront what his own behavior may have revealed. Charles understood why the words had landed with such force. As king, he carried responsibility not only for the present monarchy, but for its continuity. The steady transfer of duty, trust, and public responsibility from one generation to the next. He increasingly valued people who could absorb pressure without creating more chaos around him. Catherine had become important in that world because she rarely demanded attention. She prepared, listened, and understood that every family decision could become an institutional problem if handled carelessly. Camilla felt something far more personal. She waited until they were alone before confronting Charles, and when she finally spoke, her voice carried more hurt than anger. "Do you respect her more than you respect me?" The queen consort watched him carefully. Charles tried to explain that respect and affection were different things, that one could exist without diminishing the other. But he hesitated. That hesitation hurt more than any answer. Camilla rose from her chair before he could finish, leaving him staring after her. Catherine wanted no part of the comparison. She told William privately that Anne's statement had turned a relationship built on trust into a weapon against another woman. The Princess of Wales, William's wife, and a senior working member of the royal family, understood how quickly private respect could be mistaken for political ambition. She insisted that she had never tried to compete with Camilla. William believed her, but he also remembered moments that suddenly felt different. William recalled Charles asking Catherine for her judgment before several sensitive family decisions. The prince remembered his father dismissing louder opinions, then quietly turning toward his wife and asking, "What do you think?" At the time, it had seemed natural. Now it looked like a pattern Anne had noticed long before anyone dared name it. Charles eventually admitted the truth in a private conversation with William. Catherine possessed something he valued enormously. She could disagree without making disagreement feel like rebellion. She challenged him without humiliating him. She could say no without turning the room against him. For a monarch surrounded by caution, loyalty, and fear of giving offense, that quality had become rare. William immediately understood where the story was heading. Anne had not based her explosive sentence on one emotional impression. Something specific had convinced her. Something Catherine had done months earlier had changed the way Charles listened to her. The fracture did not begin with Anne's remark. It began months earlier. During one confrontation, Catherine never expected anyone else to remember. There was one moment Anne could not forget. No raised voices, no public humiliation, no dramatic walkout. Just Catherine, sitting opposite Charles during a fictionalized family strategy meeting and doing something extraordinarily difficult inside a monarchy built on hierarchy. She told the king he was wrong. What happened next would quietly reshape the relationship between them. Charles did not punish her. He listened. And according to the dramatic premise, Anne understood that night exactly how much his respect had shifted. Catherine had already sensed the danger before the meeting began. Charles wanted younger members of the family to take on more public duties, because he believed the monarchy needed visible continuity, meaning the public had to see the next generation steadily carrying responsibilities forward. The pressure around the family was growing, and he feared hesitation would make the institution appear uncertain. Catherine saw the same problem differently. She believed forcing too much responsibility too quickly could damage the very people expected to protect the monarchy later. Charles made his position clear, and Catherine knew disagreeing would carry a cost. During the private Windsor discussion, he supported expanding several responsibilities immediately. She waited until he had finished, then calmly told him the plan should be postponed. Institutional urgency, she argued, could not come at the expense of family stability. Charles stiffened. He asked whether she was questioning his judgment. Catherine did not retreat. She told him she was protecting the same future he was trying to protect, only from a danger he could not yet see. Anne watched the exchange with growing disbelief. The Princess Royal expected Charles to close the discussion, because few people challenged him so directly once he had made his position known. Instead, Catherine finished her objection and closed the folder in front of her. Silence followed. Then Charles looked down at the table and asked the question nobody expected. What would you do instead? In that instant, confrontation became consultation, and Anne understood that something important had changed. Charles listened as Catherine offered a slower approach, giving younger family members time to grow into greater responsibility without making them feel that duty had swallowed their private lives. He challenged several parts of her argument, but she answered without defensiveness. Anne noticed something even more striking. Neither of them tried to win. Catherine was not seeking authority, and Charles was not protecting his pride. 2 days later, Charles quietly adopted most of Catherine's recommendation. He offered no public credit, but Anne recognized the changes immediately. Later, in a private fictional conversation with William, she told him his wife had become someone Charles listened to when everyone else is trying to tell him what he wants to hear. William understood the weight of that sentence. Catherine had gained influence by refusing to chase it. Camilla would eventually understand that too. And once she realized how deeply that Windsor exchange had changed Charles's trust, admiration would begin turning into something far more painful. Catherine had won Charles's ear without seeking victory, but once that private influence became visible, Someone else began wondering what her own place beside him now meant. Camilla could tolerate criticism. What she could not tolerate was ambiguity. Anne's sentence had spread through the fictional family circle quickly enough that avoiding it became impossible. So she sought out the one person responsible. No aides. No carefully arranged statement. No buffer between them. Camilla confronted Anne directly, and what began as a demand for an explanation became a painful argument about Charles, Catherine, loyalty, and what respect actually means inside a marriage shaped by monarchy. Camilla entered the conversation already wounded. She had spent years beside Charles through scandal, scrutiny, public hostility, and the constant pressure of royal life. Anne knew exactly what those years had cost her. The queen consort, the wife of the reigning monarch, sharing his public duties without possessing his sovereign authority, believed that history should count for something. To her, Catherine's calm judgment in difficult meetings could not erase decades of sacrifice. Yet Anne refused to treat her own words as careless gossip. Anne held her ground. She said the comment had not come from jealousy, rumor, or one dramatic disagreement. The Princess Royal insisted that Charles's reliance on Catherine had become obvious inside the family because he repeatedly sought her judgment when pressure was highest. Camilla listened, then asked the question she had been holding back. "Did you mean to humiliate me?" Anne answered immediately. "No," but pretending she had not seen what was happening would have been dishonest. Camilla's composure finally cracked. She pushed her chair backward and demanded that Anne repeat the sentence directly to her face. Anne did. More quietly this time, but without changing a word. The Queen stared at her, then said Catherine had never fought the battles she had fought to stand beside Charles. She had never endured the same years of public judgment, rejection, and personal cost. Anne did not dismiss that suffering, but she answered with brutal precision, suffering and respect were not the same currency. Anne then explained what she meant. Charles turned to Catherine because she asked very little from him personally. She was not seeking reassurance, position, or victory when she advised him. That independence made her counsel feel safe. Catherine could challenge the king without making him feel cornered, and she could disagree without turning disagreement into a struggle for control. Camilla hated the comparison, but she finally understood its shape. Camilla realized Anne was not talking about romance. She was not questioning affection or marriage. She was describing trust under pressure, the kind of trust Charles displayed when decisions became difficult and everyone around him became cautious. That distinction hurt, because it could not be dismissed as simple rivalry. Charles could no longer remain silent. Every hour he avoided the issue made Anne's interpretation feel more like accepted truth, while Camilla's humiliation deepened, and Catherine remained trapped inside a conflict she had never asked to create. Anne had refused to retreat. Now every eye turned toward the one man whose silence had allowed the crisis to grow. For Charles, the crisis had become unbearable, because everyone was debating an emotion he had never defined. Anne called it respect. Camilla heard rejection. Catherine felt embarrassed. William saw danger. But the king alone knew why his trust had shifted. In the fictionalized account, he finally decided to explain himself, not before a council, not through a statement, but in a private conversation, where every word mattered, because one careless sentence could wound his family even further. Charles spoke carefully, because he understood the difference between personal devotion and institutional trust. The monarchy demanded both, but they were not the same thing. Institutional trust meant confidence in someone's judgment when decisions could affect the crown, the family, and the future at once. He told Camilla that Catherine occupied that space because she could look beyond the emotion of a difficult moment and think about what would still matter years later. That did not erase love. It did not erase loyalty. But it did explain why he listened. Camilla did not interrupt at first. The queen consort allowed him to finish, then told him Anne's words had hurt because they sounded absolute. Charles agreed. He said his sister had reduced something complicated into one brutal sentence. Yet he could not deny that Anne had identified part of the truth. He relied on Catherine in moments of pressure, and pretending otherwise would now sound dishonest. Camilla finally admitted what truly wounded her. The problem was not Catherine. She had never believed the princess was trying to replace her. The pain came from discovering that William, Anne, and perhaps others had noticed Charles's dependence long before she understood its importance. "Everyone saw it except me," she said quietly. The king tried to answer, but there was no easy comfort to give. Charles then revealed why the pattern had begun. After the Windsor disagreement, he started seeking Catherine's opinion on sensitive matters, because she had proved she would risk disappointing him rather than flatter him. "She tells me no when no is what I need to hear," he said. Camilla lowered her eyes. After a long pause, she answered, "Then perhaps Anne understood you better than I did." Charles knew there was more he had to admit. Weeks before the crisis, Anne had confronted him privately and asked whether he realized how obvious his trust in Catherine had become. He dismissed the question at the time. Now her warning sounded almost prophetic. His own behavior had spoken before he ever found the courage to explain it. Catherine would soon feel the consequences. Charles had finally explained the bond, but by explaining it, he transformed her private influence into a reality no one inside the family could comfortably ignore. Catherine had done nothing to start the conflict, yet suddenly, every conversation seemed to lead back to her. Anne had praised her. Charles had validated part of that praise. Camilla had been wounded by it, and William could see the danger immediately. Catherine's greatest strength, quietly earning trust, was being transformed into a symbol of rivalry. The more she tried to step away from the controversy, the more powerful the fictional narrative surrounding her became. Catherine felt no sense of victory. She understood exactly why the comparison was dangerous, because royal influence was never just personal. Once people believed someone held special access to the monarch, every conversation could be treated as evidence of hidden power. She told William privately that she hated the idea that earning Charles's respect somehow required Camilla to lose something. The prince listened carefully, because he saw another danger too. If his wife became an unofficial rival center of influence, even ordinary family disagreements could begin looking like battles for control. William tried to reassure her, but Catherine remained deeply uneasy. She admitted she wished Anne had never expressed the truth as a comparison between two women. Praise had become humiliation, and she could not ignore the fact that Camilla was carrying the emotional cost. William knew his wife had never sought that outcome. He also knew restraint would now matter more than argument, because one defensive move could make the rivalry feel real. Camilla made her own feelings clear without saying a word. She withdrew from a fictional family dinner and sent a brief message that she was tired. Charles understood immediately. The Queen was not avoiding the meal because of exhaustion. She was protecting herself from sitting across from Catherine while everyone silently remembered Anne's statement. The king felt the consequence sharply, because his attempt to explain the truth had not repaired the damage. It had made the tension impossible to hide. Anne contacted Catherine directly in a private fictional conversation soon afterward. The Princess Royal refused to apologize for recognizing her value, but she admitted the wording had caused more pain than she expected. Catherine did not argue. She told Anne that being respected by Charles meant very little if that respect was used to wound someone else. The blunt admission forced her to reconsider what her statement had unleashed. Catherine then made the decision that shifted the entire crisis. She asked Charles to speak privately with Camilla and repair their relationship without defending her at all. "Please don't use my name when you speak to her tonight," she said. The king paused, understood exactly what she was asking, and nodded. Camilla would soon learn about that request. And when she did, something inside the conflict changed. Catherine had been handed an opportunity to benefit from another woman's humiliation, and had deliberately refused it. By refusing to benefit from Camilla's pain, Catherine did what no palace strategy could have achieved, and opened the door to the story's decisive turning point. The turning point does not arrive through Charles. It does not come from Anne, William, or a carefully managed royal intervention. In this dramatized storyline, it happens when Catherine and Camilla finally speak alone. No aides, no husbands, no one to translate their words into palace strategy. For the first time since Anne's statement detonated inside the family, the two women most affected by it confront the comparison directly and discover they are angry about very different things. Catherine knew the silence between them could not continue. She had already asked Charles not to use her name when repairing his marriage, but that was no longer enough. If Anne's praise continued defining every exchange between them, resentment would harden into something permanent. The Princess of Wales, a senior working royal with a central role beside William, wanted the relationship judged by what she and Camilla actually believed, not by one brutal sentence spoken in anger and certainty. Camilla received her with guarded formality. The Queen Consort assumed Catherine had come because duty required reassurance, and that assumption made her colder than she intended. Catherine noticed immediately. She did not offer a rehearsed defense. Instead, she admitted that Anne's statement had embarrassed her deeply because it reduced complicated relationships to a contest she had never entered. She had not wanted to win Charles's respect at another woman's expense. Camilla finally allowed the real wound to surface. "I thought you had taken something from me," she said. Catherine did not flinch. "I never wanted anything that required taking it from you." The words changed the tone completely. Camilla admitted her fear was not really Catherine's influence. It was the possibility that Charles had developed a form of trust in someone else that she could no longer give him herself. Catherine answered with unusual firmness. She told Camilla that trust in one relationship did not erase sacrifice in another. Charles, turning to her for judgment, did not cancel the years the Queen had spent beside him through pressure, criticism, and public scrutiny. Anne's statement, she insisted, could describe one kind of respect without becoming a verdict on another woman's worth. Camilla listened, then gave something back. She acknowledged that Catherine's behavior during the fallout had proved exactly why Charles trusted her. She had been given every opportunity to exploit the moment, yet she refused. The Queen admitted that restraint mattered more than any title or whispered influence, because it showed character when power was available. Catherine did not pretend everything was healed. Camilla did not pretend the hurt had vanished. But they reached one clear agreement. Anne's sentence would not be allowed to become a weapon between them. That decision would soon become visible, far beyond the family. The private conflict had finally begun to heal, but outside those walls, the explosive sentence was already becoming a national spectacle. Inside the family, the temperature was falling. Outside, it was rising fast. Anne's fictional shock statement had escaped the boundaries of a private royal drama and become a public referendum on Catherine's place in the monarchy. Newspapers seized the wording. Broadcasters debated what respect meant. Supporters read it as confirmation of Catherine's growing importance. Critics called the comparison needlessly cruel. Yet one public moment captured the story more powerfully than any panel discussion ever could. Catherine understood why the reaction had shifted so quickly. The public was no longer debating affection or marriage. People were asking who Charles trusted when pressure became serious, and what that trust revealed about the monarchy's future. The Princess of Wales had become a symbol of stability between generations, while palace aides avoided commenting on Anne's exact words. Their reasoning was simple. Another statement could deepen the dispute, while a united appearance might quietly weaken it. Camilla knew the next public engagement would be difficult. Every glance toward Catherine, every pause, every step beside her, would be interpreted through the controversy. The Queen had agreed privately that Anne's sentence would not become a weapon between them, but public scrutiny made that promise harder. Catherine felt the same pressure. Both women understood that appearing too distant would feed the rivalry, while appearing unnaturally close would look staged. Anne watched the frenzy with growing discomfort. The Princess Royal had intended to speak bluntly about Charles's trust, not launch a national debate about two women competing for his respect. Then, a fictional morning newspaper pushed the story even further. Its front page carried the headline, "The Woman the King Listens To," with Anne's statement beneath it. Suddenly, Catherine's influence was no longer a private family question. It had become the defining public interpretation. Catherine faced the moment outside Buckingham Palace, the monarch's main London residence, and one of the most recognizable symbols of royal authority. A small crowd had gathered as she and Camilla arrived for the same engagement. She could have walked ahead. Instead, she paused. The Queen noticed, joined her, and the two women entered together. The gesture was simple, but it changed the tone immediately. They were refusing the rivalry everyone else had constructed around them. Charles understood the significance later. In a private fictional conversation, he thanked Catherine for preventing the dispute from becoming a lasting fracture. The king told her that restraint had done more than any official statement could have done. Once again, he was acknowledging the exact quality Anne had identified from the beginning. Anne could no longer ignore what her words had caused. The headlines were fading, the family was beginning to heal, and Catherine and Camilla had chosen dignity over competition. But one thing remained unresolved. The monarchy had survived the headline, but Anne still owed the family something more important than another shocking statement, a final reckoning with what she had set in motion. By the time Anne speaks again, nobody needs another explosion. Charles has confronted what his behavior revealed. Camilla has confronted what the comparison awakened inside her. Catherine has refused to turn influence into victory. And Anne has watched one sentence expose every fault line at once. The fictional crisis ends where it began, with the Princess Royal choosing her words carefully. But this time, she does not speak to provoke. She speaks to clarify what she believes the family almost misunderstood. Anne chooses a private family conversation rather than any public interview or formal announcement. The Princess Royal, the monarch's eldest daughter, and one of the most senior working members of the family, admits that her original wording was deliberately forceful. She believed Charles had begun depending on Catherine's judgment without fully recognizing how visible that dependence had become. But she also makes something clear. She never meant to rank the women in his life by love, loyalty, sacrifice, or personal worth. Camilla hears the apology directly. Anne tells her that she regrets making Catherine's strength sound like another woman's failure. The Queen does not pretend the wound vanished simply because the intention has been explained. She tells Anne that words spoken inside a family can cut deeper than public criticism because they come from people whose judgment matters. Yet she accepts the distinction, and that acceptance finally removes the poison from the comparison. Charles takes responsibility next. The king admits that his silence helped create the crisis. He had allowed patterns of trust to become obvious without explaining what they meant, leaving Camilla to interpret them as rejection and Catherine to carry attention she never sought. He finally says what should have been said much earlier. Different relationships can hold different kinds of trust without one replacing another. Catherine emerges from the conflict stronger precisely because she never tried to win it. She refused to use Anne's praise against Camilla, refused to turn Charles's confidence into personal power, and repeatedly stepped away from the idea of rivalry. William recognizes what that means for the future. The prince understands that his wife's influence will not come from demanding authority. It will come from becoming the person others seek when pressure overwhelms protocol, the established rules and customs guiding royal conduct. Anne looks at Catherine during the final fictional exchange and refuses to withdraw her respect for her. But she admits she should never have expressed that respect by diminishing someone else. Catherine answers simply, "Then we understand each other." Camilla hears it. Charles hears it. And for the first time since the crisis began, nobody feels the need to argue. Anne's sentence began as a shock, became a wound, and ended as a lesson. Catherine had not defeated Camilla. Anne had not chosen a replacement queen. Charles had not rejected his wife. What the crisis revealed was something quieter and more lasting. Respect inside a monarchy is not inherited by title. It is earned in the moments when telling the truth costs something. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.